All right, hello. My name is Carrie Keenan. Jessica Chait and I are co-chairs of this Chelsea Land Use Committee, which meets monthly, and this is our October meeting. As per the governor's orders, we have been meeting remotely. This meeting is being recorded and is currently live streaming on YouTube, and it will be accessible following the meeting. The agenda for tonight is public and can be viewed on the Community Board 4 website. We encourage you to sign up for eBlast to get the agenda. If this is your first time at a Community Board 4 meeting, there are 3 things to know about the process. 1, after each presentation, first the committee will ask questions to the presenter, then the members of the public or attendees can ask questions or make a comment. Subsequently, the discussion goes back to the committee. On some agenda items, the committee members may next vote to make a recommendation, which usually results in a letter for the full board to vote on. And 3, if you want to comment or ask a question after a presentation and after the committee has spoken, you must press the raised hand button on your screen, usually on the bottom right. If you're calling in, use *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute. If anyone has any questions regarding what I just shared, please raise your hand now. Seeing no hands. Jessica, would you like to introduce yourself? And then maybe everyone else can say a quick hello.
Sure. Good evening. I'm Jessica Chait, co-chair of Chelsea Land Use and Community Board 4 first vice chair. Oh, Tina's here. Great.
Oh, wow.
Tina, we'll go to you.
Hi, I'm Tina DiFelice Antonio. I live on 26 between 6th and 7th.
Great. Viren?
I'm Varan Bramble, Chelsea Land Use Committee, who live on 20th Street.
Dave?
I'm Dave Holoka. I live on 19th Street between 9th and 10th Avenue.
Great. Hector?
Hi, I'm Hector Vasquez, and I live in Fulton Houses in Chelsea.
Thank you. Betty?
Hi, I'm Betty McIntosh. I live on 28th Street between 8th and 9th in Penn South.
Paul?
Hi, I'm Paul Devlin. I'm also co-chair of the Hell's Kitchen Land Use Committee.
Great. Bert?
I am Bert Lasner. I live on West 24th Street and 10th Avenue, and also co-chair of the Business License and Permits Committee.
Marty?
Hi, I'm Marty DeCat. I am a resident of Penn South.
Great. Back to you, Carrie.
Oh, well, I'm Carrie. I live on 21st Street. So we're all neighbors. So we have 2 agenda items tonight, which we are hoping optimistically means that this will be a very brief meeting, which I think everyone would appreciate. The first is the LPC checklist. As you may remember, in July, we discussed this at our committee meeting, and during the ensuing month of August, we received comments from committee members and then amended the list to reflect those comments. So thanks to everyone who did send in their thoughts. After that, Paul then took the list to Clinton Hell's Kitchen Land Use in September for their meeting. And there were some further suggestions from that committee, which were also incorporated into what you see tonight. A few things to keep in mind. This document, we really feel very strongly that it's a living document, and it will change over time based on how we see it's being used. So it's by no means the end all and be all. And the format that you see tonight will also be turned into a fillable PDF. So this is really for content, not for presentation. You'll see the hopefully final version at full board should it move forward tonight, and it'll be much easier to fill out than it looks right now. So since everyone's already commented from this committee, hopefully we can move to a vote. But if anyone has anything to say, please raise your hand. Anybody from, Betty?
No, I just wanted to say that I think that it's been well reviewed and revised, and I think it is a good final.
Thanks, Betty.
And I'll just quickly add, I want to thank really Betty and Paul for encouraging. When Carrie and I became co-chairs, they had a list of items that they felt would be really useful to continue to guide the work of the committee, and this was one of them. And I know it's something that had been discussed maybe with Dave, with you as well, but really appreciate the impetus, and really happy that we could bring this to this point. And again, as Carrie said, we'll see how it's used, but think that this has the potential to be a really helpful tool in preparing not only the applicants, but also our committee members for the discussions that will come before us.
Is there anybody from the community who has anything they'd like to add, say? No? Well, then we leave it in your hands, committee.
Jesse, we do need a vote on this. Is that correct?
I mean, I think just to cover our bases at this point, I'd have to look back and make sure where we left it last time. But I think we've certainly this committee has voted on it already, so I think you're okay, honestly. But if we want to just cover our bases and say we had a final vote on the final document, that's great.
Okay, I'll make a resolution that we approve the final document with all the revisions made from our committee and from the people to the north.
I'll second that.
Thank you. All in favor? Looks unanimous. Any opposed? Abstaining? Present not eligible? We have an LPC checklist for now.
Yay.
Still full board. Yay. Awesome. Jessica, over to you.
Great. So our second item, on the agenda tonight is regarding the budget. You all know that each committee puts together their recommendations, and then the budget task force, of which I am a member, will review all of the recommendations from across the board. Last year, Chelsea Land Use had 6 budget requests. And actually, Jesse, I just put them into one Excel doc and added the 3 others that we discussed at our last meeting. Is it okay if I share my screen?
Of course.
And then everybody can look at the same thing?
Yep.
Great. So for the purposes of tonight, though, great, and apologies for all the background noise. Can you all see that?
Yes, we can see
Yeah.
that.
I think it's coming
Okay.
on now. Yep.
Can you
Great.
zoom in a little bit more though?
Sure.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so you'll see here, I just sort of taken the template that was in the Dropbox for those who were looking at those materials originally. And these here that I've highlighted are things that were all submitted last year. As I understand it, I don't think we are satisfied with the funding, meaning none of them have been sufficiently addressed. And I think all of them remain requests of our committee. And so I believe our recommendation would be to continue to keep these on the request list. And since that time, we've taken up other issues, of course, or experienced other challenges here in the district, which, based on the discussion at our last meeting, had us create 3 new budget requests. One important distinction is that one of these is actually a capital request, and that's for former colored school number 4. I want to note, I hope everybody saw the New York Times article this past week, which was really very exciting. I believe Eric Washington is in the attendees section this evening, and want to congratulate him and Carrie for the great content that they both provided for the article. And just as a further side note on that topic, following the article, Jesse has been in touch with DSNY, and we received their report on the facility. And we are going to have another meeting, which is not in the Dropbox. We will be sharing with you shortly, which shows some very helpful pictures to understand the state of the space. And additionally, we have requested a meeting with Eric's office, Eric Botcher, and DSNY to further push on a remedy as well as landmarking the facility. So just, that's a brief aside to the budget conversation, but wanted everyone to know that our efforts there continue.
As part of that aside, could you say something about the state of the roof?
Sure.
The roof needs repair, without a doubt.
Yeah, the roof is damaged, causing water leakage, and there's some conflicting reports about how significant that water damage is, but without question, the damage, the water leaking will continue without a repair to the roof. So,
But since we last talked, there's no progress on getting that roof fixed.
we
Yes,
are
this,
not aware of any progress.
sorry, Jessica.
Thank you.
We
Sorry,
just,
Carrie, did you want-
no, I just wanted to say we have been trying to get this inspection report from DSNY. So this is, we just got it like 2 days ago and have already started, setting up a meeting with Councilmember Botcher's office to address what they said. We will get that to you ASAP. I think it just missed the Dropbox.
So the other 2 items are for things that we've talked about pretty extensively. And forgive, I just put them into this format. So Jesse, I don't even know if this is the right format, if this is the exact language you would use. So forgive me if these 2 things I've highlighted here are not the correct language, but really it's these 2 issues, which is increased funding for additional LPC staff in order to expedite recommendations for landmarking, some of which have been backlogged, as you can see here, for quite some time. And the second is to provide funds for inspectors to investigate structural stability of landmark buildings and buildings in historic districts before alteration, construction, et cetera, to avoid the situation, or in an attempt to avoid the situation that we experienced at the Gansevoort site. So these are 2 additional, or really 3 additional requests. Does anyone have any comments or questions about keeping these from last year on and adding these 3 to the list? Obviously, this priority list, I'm hoping once we get straight on what the items are, I'm hoping we can just take a few minutes and see if we can come up with our own proposed ranking given the new priorities. Dave.
This is a minor correction, but on item 13, second last line, it talks about the West Chelsea Historic District. It would be the expansion of the Chelsea Historic District.
Thank you. Betty?
Now, I have a suggestion, but it may not fit exactly any place. I would wish that we could have something to say about the need for more services and funding for staff to deal with the thousands of people who are coming in on buses at the Port Authority and then need to have shelter and many, many other services. And so I don't know, maybe that's not appropriate for this document, but I'd like to put my 2 cents in for that.
Well, we have a Housing, Health and Human Services Committee meeting on Thursday, and I would be happy to raise that there. They've taken up several tours and discussions about the homeless population, including recent asylees. I'm not sure if it's appropriate for Chelsea Land Use to have that as an agenda item, as a budget suggestion, but I would think that would be appropriate for that committee to consider, and I'd be happy to raise it. I'm on that committee myself, so I'm happy to raise it.
I'm on the committee too.
Yes.
Okay, I'll just leave it there.
I wonder, Betty, is there a way that you think we could phrase it? Like, I don't, this is wrong as well, but like immediate report on empty, empty residential or office buildings that might be able to be used for this purpose, or, I'm just trying to think of how we can make it a land use request.
And that, well, yes, it could be kind of expanded to say, identify shelter and housing opportunities in underutilized or vacant commercial buildings or hotels. Something like that.
Do you want to write something for that and we can add it?
Well, I mean, I don't know if the committee thinks that's appropriate. I don't know. Maybe
Let
something.
me just ask a procedural question. Like we've obviously done the work on studying potential office conversion. We had the fellow working with Viren last year, but we haven't necessarily taken up the issue specifically of immediate action for the purposes of addressing the asylee or homelessness. I don't know, just Jesse, from can we have something that we haven't? Is this too
Well,
narrow, given that we have?
I think well, again, it matters how we write it, but I think I think you can go back to what you guys have done. You guys did submit for a planning fellow who did report in a project on conversion of properties for housing. So you're on record for that. You're obviously on record for the approval of the affordable housing plan already. So I think if you couch it in the need to expand and be creative with emergency housing, then I think that you guys are fully in that fully falls into land use, and you guys certainly are on record for for supporting those ideas. So I'm not saying you're approving X hotel to be turned into this or that office building turned into that, but you are saying that you want more funding and thought being put from the city towards that. So I could see that.
Because we probably also aren't in a space right now where, given all the other projects anticipated to come down the pike right now, that we're necessarily saying that this should be in our district, but rather to address the influx or the flow of people coming through our district.
Yeah, listen, I think, as you know, Jessica, because you are the chair of the budget task force, I think this conversation will be happening at probably multiple committees and definitely at the budget task force. So I do think whether we put it in directly into this set tonight or not, I do think it will be, this will be a topic of conversation that will be happening for sure at the other committees and certainly the budget task force.
Okay, Bert?
Yeah, I think it was in the Dropbox, there was a response from LPC about budget requests. And it struck me it was very self-satisfied. They said they had enough, that they were very well funded and they're taking care of everything. So it may be superfluous, but in our recommendation for additional staffing at LPC, we might want to make some kind of comment about this is maybe a new function for not this. No, it's not a new function. We want them to have a backlog, which they don't mention. And we think they need to get rid of the backlog. Because it just jumped up. Oh, they have enough. Don't give us any more. Everything is taken care of. I'm not sure what language we wanted. Like I said, it may be superfluous.
No, I don't know if this language change alone,
I would just add on to that. I think specifics are helpful in this, and I think we have a number of, we certainly on this, right, and you guys have a certain, the building that we're referencing, which is the former Color School number 4. as an example, but you know that Clinton Hell's Kitchen Land Use has St. Benedict the Moors Church with a similar situation. And so I think if we just highlight the fact that these are two actual locations that we would like them to calendar, and actually have a hearing on, that's what we want. And so I think giving that particular detail, because I think Bert is right, they'll continue just to say that they're just fine.
And
so,
Bayview, right? Bayview too?
Bayview too. I'm sorry. I
Yeah.
apologize, David. I forgot Bayview. So I do think we can just, again, and we'll combine that with Clinton House Kitchen Land Use, and we'll have a number of sites that we're saying, well, but you're not addressing the sites that requests for evaluation have been put in for years.
Yeah, I apologize for speaking out of turn, but in terms of the colored school, that RFE's been in there since 2018. That's 5 years. And they've since instituted this equity framework. And, if not a lack of staff, what's their reason for dragging their feet?
Yeah, so I've added that language to cite the 3 locations. We can obviously clean it up, but we'll make sure that gets inserted there. Marty?
I just want to say that I'm pleased we're inserting the language for homeless housing, for immigrant housing. Even if it's taken as the main item of another committee, it's important that we too raise our voices on that issue. So thank you, Betty, for raising that. I'm glad we're including it.
Thank you. Betty, your hand is up. Do you have something
Yeah,
new?
no, I like the direction we were going with LPC, and I can visualize that you put the number of years that each one of these 3 sites has been waiting to hear from LPC, because it's dramatic.
Yeah, we can put, if, I don't know if it's Jesse or, well, I assume all the letters are on the,
yeah,
in our website.
We'll get the details later, but for sure, I think if we make sure we just add it into the leave the blank for it in the request, we can definitely add it.
Great. Okay, so any thoughts? And sorry, would this new emergency housing can that funding be expense, or is that capital? Because we're not talking about the construction of new places. We're talking about an immediate solve. Does that make that an expense budget? Jesse?
Can I?
Yeah.
From our perspective, I think that if we're looking at converting hotels or commercial space or whatever, we could use the line item as a capital expenditure to fund the reconstruction of those spaces, and the other committees could put in an expense line to offer the support services necessary for those facilities. So maybe that's how we tackle it from land use.
My concern about that, not that that's not a good long-term solution, is just that that's going to take years before, I think this is, I don't know if the suggestion is add this is motivated by dealing with the immediate issue, or about planning for, having the appropriate facilities to address this long-term, this issue that is likely not going away and the city will need more resources for.
Right, but I think in terms of the emergency situation, they will need, I would think, capital funding to be able to reconstruct the spaces to make them. I don't know how capital funding and expense funding operates at the city level, but maybe that's the way we distinguish it as a land use committee request. And that's something Jessica at the budget task force could kind of navigate through.
And if I might, you could expand it to emergency housing, yada, yada, and permanent affordable housing. You could make it like two topics on the same theme.
I mean, Jesse, do you have any thoughts on whether it's capital or it's an expense? You've been through this way more times than.
Well, yeah, but we're a little bit through the looking glass here. So I think this might be something we want to be a little amorphous on tonight, so we're not having to worry about getting into, expense or capital. I think you guys could decide whether this as an idea is something as a priority for the committee. And I think by the time you get through housing, as Jessica and Betty will know, I think you'll have maybe some, a deeper conversation as to what we want to, exactly what we want to be doing for the housing component of it. I'm certainly can then, in the meantime, then try to, understand a little bit more, because I would normally say capital. The answer would be normally capital, because it would be running through HPD, and that's a capital funding. But with an emergency situation, if we're saying emergency, basically what we're saying is emergency shelters, for, and then a long-term and then more long-term, full, regular housing solve. I would say that, the long-term is obviously capital. I would say the short-term, I'm not 100% clear on. So I think though, I think if you guys just make this in general, this issue a priority for you all, whether it be short-term or long-term, but it's for the same population, it's for the population that we're talking about. I think we can figure that out, and it will end up with the best result through our budget requests, in my opinion. I just don't think we have the kind of consensus understanding and knowledge base right now to decide exactly which direction it should go in.
Okay,
In my
yeah, I think, so notwithstanding the fact that we're not sure which bucket this goes in, do folks have thoughts about how to prioritize the new expense requests in light of the existing expense requests, which we are going to add to this? So as an example, do we want to say that additional staff for LPC and for DOB is more of a priority than the DOB website? And then let's just start there. Carrie?
My feeling is the roof of the former colored school number 4, and even if it is picked up by another committee, which I suspect also it will be, the emergency housing issue should be prioritized as 1 and 2.
Sorry, but those will be on a list, a capital exclusive list. So
I see.
so
Okay,
I
so they're
wanted to
separated
just-
out.
Exactly. So for our purposes, I was hoping seeing as I kind of imagine I think that's an easier decision for us. I think there's probably, I don't know, we can discuss it, but I think there's probably some agreement on that. I was hoping we could start with expense. So with that, just to say it again, do people feel that the request for additional LPC staff, or excuse me, LPC staff to reduce the backlog and the inspectors for DOB goes above the funding and prioritizing of updating the DOB website? I'm going to go ahead and say, I think it does.
I think it does too.
I think it does also. Definitely it does.
Right. Okay. So with that logic,
I'm going to say from a Chelsea perspective, yes, but I will say from a Hell's Kitchen land use perspective, that demolition by neglect issue has affected a great number of houses, housing units, and a lot of apartments, a lot of spaces. So that may bump up. So from a Chelsea land use perspective, but not from an overall district-wide land use perspective.
So Paul, you're just saying instead of this being 1 and 2, you would make 2 number 1. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, I would make 2 number. I would put the backlog from LPC is maybe number one, but then the demolition by neglect is number two, and then investigators for stabilization number three. And also because we know LPC and the agency is going to say no to this, I don't want the building by neglect issues and the website redesign to get pushed back too far. But that's going to be a conversation at the budget task force, less so than here, I think.
Okay.
But
So,
if we do it here, it'll be less of a discussion at the budget task force.
Sorry, not to sound like an unhelpful neighbor, but we are Chelsea Land Use. So will you be bringing that up at Clinton Hell's Kitchen, Paul? And that will be your priority?
Well, the items that are on here, the expense item, which is on the demolition by neglect issue, that carried over from multiple years now as a land use concern. And so it's raised up on priority for the board as a whole. And I'm just pointing out, I mean, you're right. This is Chelsea Land Use. Chelsea Land Use could say these other things are a higher priority. But as Bert points out, if we can say, all right, look, we recognize as a district, there are other issues, and we're going to recognize that we'll place some of the other issues above the others, that will create less of a debate at the entirety of budget task force.
just a question, if currently, if there were more, forgive me if I'm not fully grasping all the nuance here, but if there were more inspectors, request number two, if there were more inspectors identifying which buildings may lack structural stability, isn't that more important than the updating the website when improper demolition has happened? Because it might lead, like, with more inspectors, then we might avoid that situation.
Not necessarily, because the inspectors, the issue is that DOB and HPD and the landowners aren't working in conjunction with one another, right? So more inspectors will maybe identify the issues, but it's not going to alert the people that can make the difference happen. So for example, we don't know about the Department of Buildings discovering a problem in a building until it's way too late to do anything about it. And so we're trying to get DOB and HPD and the community board to work together to identify these problem areas so that we can work on addressing and finding solutions prior to the demolition even occurring.
I would say something very similar as to what Paul just said. The item that was number one last year was there to prevent the demolition of buildings as a result of more knowledge about the state of those buildings. That's the first point about that I want to make. The second is, we had a long discussion about that item last year. I would like to see it remain as number one from a strategic point of view, so that our committee can be saying, we still think that's an important issue and we want to continue to push for it. I would want the other two items to be number 1A and number 1B. They're also important, but I don't want to diminish the item that we had as number one last year by telling people that we think we can move it down. No, I don't think we should move it down.
I would change the language, that first sentence. I would keep it number one, but instead of starting out with updating the website, we should say something to support owners or whatever and prevent the agencies from improper demolition. We need to fund and prioritize the updating of the DOB website. So the website doesn't come first. Really, it's not the website that we're so much concerned about. We're concerned about the information and what to prevent the improper demolition, and that facilitates it. But I think we should start out with preventing improper demolition.
Do other folks have thoughts on
I'm good
this
with that.
as remaining number one? I can't see all of you, which makes this challenging for me.
I'm okay with it remaining number one.
Okay, and then we'll move the new requests to follow and then jump down to what was the second, previously the second request. I mean, it says number 13 here only because this is from the larger list, but it was otherwise clues number 2, which is expand community boards OTPS to include money that would allow for the continued funding of land use studies. So this would become 4.
Yeah.
5, 6, 7, 8, and then capital would be first with roof repairs, and then TBD on the as the discussion plays out further as to where this issue of housing for recent arrivals based on the larger conversation that we know will take place. Thoughts on this?
So move.
Great. Keeping us on track. Do we have a second?
Second.
Great. All in favor?
Aye, aye, aye.
All right. Okay. I'm going to stop the share there. Oh, hopefully that works. Great. Thank you all. Thank you for that. And the next budget meeting is next week. So we'll look forward to coming back to you with some additional, with updates following that meeting. I think we have some announcements. Carrie, do you want to do those and then close us out?
Sure. Unfortunately, Peggy Coe is no longer on the board. She had some personal stuff that was just going to take too much time away. So she was working with us on, making sure that we were never forgetting former colored school number 4. So if anybody would like to step up and help out with that project, that would be wonderful. Please let us know. And Murnal has been asked to represent our committee with Jessica on the capstone project. Jessica, maybe you should say something more about that because you know a lot more than I do.
Sure. So I suspect all of you heard it, or for those who joined the board meeting, I believe there was an update. The CB4 has secured the participation of a Wagner NYU capstone team, and that this group is going to be looking specifically around the issue of connectivity of the far west side. So essentially, where are there opportunities to improve or build off of current successes where there is, or rather, I should say, to improve areas or opportunities of connectivity so that the west side feels far west side feels more integrated with the district and really with the city. And so we have just started this work. I'll be co-chairing the committee. Housing, both land use and transportation all have 2 representatives from each committee participating. And
Environment.
And excuse me, thank you. And WPE, Marty is on that from that perspective. And the group just recently started meeting, and Murnal, as Carrie mentioned, will join us representing Chelsea Land Use. And we look forward to reporting back, not only reporting back, but actually maybe bringing the capstone team to one of our meetings to share, and as importantly, to hear from all of you where you think there's, again, successes of connectivity and where there may be challenges, and to also identify additional stakeholders who they may want to speak to look at this issue. Marty, your hand is up.
You just mentioned colored school number 4 because we don't have a champion on our committee. Eric, Mr. Washington is in the audience, and to the committee, but to him as well, one of the ways for us to stay, it's part of our statement of district needs. And I would invite him, Mr. Washington, to periodically come to our meeting and bring us up to date. And that might be, if he's willing to do that, that might be a really good way for us to stay current.
Well, I actually raised my hand because his hand is raised as a panelist. So can we bring Eric over?
Well, I certainly invite him to, yeah.
Thank you. And I didn't mean to say that we don't have a champion. I just meant to encourage somebody from our committee to become another champion.
I have a feeling all of us are in favor of it. Is that what you're saying, Carrie?
Well, I'll call on you, Marty, then next time there's something that needs to be done about it, or you can join us at the next DSNY meeting. How about that?
Fine.
Awesome. Thank you.
I'm also interested if I could be of help.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, Eric, did you want to?
Oh, yes, I didn't know if I was
Yeah.
on. It's like Red Rover. So I wanted to cheer, thank you all again for moving this forward and getting this on this funding request on the statement of needs. I want to cheer for you having received the report that you've been awaiting. I'd love to see a copy of that. If that's possible, or at least have some sort of distilled information from it. And as you mentioned, going back to Councilman Botcha's office about setting up further meeting or whatever, is it possible to, or is it already in the works to request some sort of a site visit where we could take photos? Because there might be things to see that are not iterated in the report as it's written down, or that have changed since the report was written a few months ago. So a site visit would be really, I think, enlightening to anybody.
We're pushing hard on that, Eric, just so you know. They're very apprehensive about doing that, and we'll keep on continuing to push hard on that for sure.
Great.
I almost can promise you one of their restriction will be no photos, but
Really? Okay. Yeah.
yeah, but we'll work on that with Eric's office to get that done.
Great. Thank you. Thank you all.
Actually,
But you understand why photos are important, I'm sure, Jesse.
I do.
The photos that we would take memorialize the state at the time we go through it. And will memorialize if they permit further deterioration. I mean, that's sort of obvious.
I understand. I'm just making.
Eric, while we have you, I just wanted to clarify, was the first request for evaluation submitted to landmarks in 2017 or 18?
November of 2018, and the second
Okay.
one was in April 2020.
4 years.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I heard what you said, Jesse, about the photos, and another reason for that. I know Historic District HDC has approached me about helping out, and I suggested that if they could maybe speak to the SHPO, and there was a feeling that not having images, interior images, might be a sticking point. Because I think they're also curious as to what is original that's still intact, or as well as the condition of what is there now. So that would be another reason for having photos. If
I'm all with you. You're preaching to the choir.
right.
We're going to fight as hard as we can.
Thanks, Eric. Mike?
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to point out to everyone, if they hadn't seen it yet, the wonderful New York Times article that picked this story up. And our dear Carrie Keenan was quoted, and she spoke eloquently, as did Eric. So I just want to let you guys know that it's out there. If you want to go read the article, I guess go look at the archives or something. And that's it.
Thanks, Mike. I think you might have joined a tiny bit late because we got some props already. So thanks, everybody.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
my
it's
closest
twice as
friend
nice.
well, my closest friend is on his deathbed. And,
I'm sorry, Mike. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
so I mean, my very closest, going back to
Apologies.
childhood. So forgive me for being late.
Not at all. Listen, I think we can adjourn on that note too. Would anybody like to make that motion?
Yeah.
I'll move to adjourn.
Second.
Thanks, everyone, for the greatest, shortest Chelsea land use meeting ever.
And thank you for
Thank
your
you all.
leadership, you and Jessica.
Thanks, Tina.
Our pleasure. Thank you all, Mike.
Thanks
We're
for the
thinking of
invitation
you.
also to come back.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Please come back, Mike.
Bye.
I hope to.
Take
Yeah.
care, Mike.
So
Thanks.
sorry, Mike.
Okay.